Welcome to the Talent Equation Podcast. If you are passionate about helping young people to unleash their potential and want to find ways to do that better, then you've come to the right place. The Talent Equation Podcast seeks to answer the important questions facing parents, coaches, and talent developers as they try to help young people become the best they can be. This is a series of unscripted, unpolished conversations between people at the razor's edge of the talent community who are prepared to share their knowledge, experiences, and challenges in an effort to help others get better faster. Listen, reflect, and don't forget to join the discussion at thetalentequation.co.uk. Enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, just wanted to jump in for a second to share with you a couple of opportunities for learning and development coming up in the new year. I've got a couple of events happening that I'm working on in partnership with some intrepid organisers who are helping me put on some learning and development events and share some of the experiences and knowledge that some of the people on the guests in a more in-depth way coming up. So in early January, with the great help of Juan Gonzalez Mendia, who from Sudamerica Coaching, we're running the Future of Coaching event, and I'm joined by Mark Bennett and John O'Sullivan, not Mark O'Sullivan, from John from Over the Pond, and we're getting together running an event called Future of Coaching with some also additional special surprise guests, and also with the help of the guys over at Stuart Melville's College. I'm running Talent Equation Live, an experiment in learning where I'm bringing together some of the people who've been on the podcast in the shape of Russell Earnshaw, John Fletcher, Danny Newcomb, Sarah Kelleher, and Mark as well. Mark Bennett's coming as well. So, and then that event is on the 29th of March. All the details are available on the events page on the website. Head over there, and it'd be great to see you. Well, looking forward to our conversation this morning because I'm joined. It's just turned this afternoon, in actual fact. There you go. That's how fast the morning has gone by in this high-octane world of coaching and coach development. I am joined by Jack Shakespeare. Jack, welcome to the Talent Equation.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Quite an honour. Although I'm not sure I can beat Top Your Son that was on this a couple of weeks ago.
Yes. He's a superstar. He's asking me about getting his own agent. Oh, I don't know. It's just non-stop for the boy. I think it's gone to his head a little bit.
Yeah, probably.
Jack, I'm glad to have you on. It's been a long time coming. We've been swimming in similar rivers professionally, and had lots of conversations about all things, kind of youth sport, coaching, physical activity, the whole thing. There's a lot to get through today, but the starting point probably is your backstory, because I think that's quite varied, and there's a lot in there, and I think then we can just see where our conversation goes.
Yeah, great. No, again, thanks for your time. I feel massively out of my depth compared to some of the other speakers in this, and I really am a big fan of the podcast, so really quite an honour to be amongst all the other people that have contributed to this. Look, I think my journey to here, probably like many others, it actually starts way before I started working. It's my own experiences with sport and physical activity, and that was quite mixed as a child and as a young person. Had really, quite positive memories and experiences of physical activity and sport, in that sort of primary school age, but really struggled with it in adolescence, and and sort of fell out of love with physical activity and sport because of maybe wasn't engaging in the right social environments, didn't have maybe the right influences around me, and it became quite a negative thing for me, sort of sport and physical activities. So so that sort of 13 to 18, I actually became quite largely inactive. Just not engaging in it. Sort of fell out of love with my background in community sport. I played football I'll get a plug in for Lawford Juniors FC. That was a great club there, and helped to bring me up really. And coming from a single parent family, it became quite a bedrock, for structuring weeks. And I just sort of fell out of love with it, but then fell back into it when I sort of left college and found physical activity and sport for myself other than other people. I think that was a real big that was a big influence on me at the time, and has had a massive influence on my career. Sort of that, trying to set up environments, whether it's, working with people that facilitate physical activity or people that, go on to create those environments. How do we make physical activity meaningful and positive and for the individual rather than necessarily for anyone else? And I've sort of carried that with me, and that led me to go on to study sports psychology at university. I had a real interest in that area, to look at not just the sort of physical side of it, but why people do it, and maybe the motivators and the sort of the confidence aspects around it. And then I was quite fortunate enough to sort of take that degree and go around the world with it. I was really fortunate enough to travel, working with children and young people, in India, which was quite an eye-opener, working in actually in a girls' orphanage in South India, sort of, I say, teaching them cricket, but they were definitely teaching me cricket. It was certainly the other way around, but it was a real schooling in working with children, particularly when you're not speaking the same language. Sport and physical activity and enthusiasm and fun became our common language rather than anything else. Went around to North America, coaching out in North America. Actually did that during my university years as well, sort of working on sort of sports camps during the summers. Again, real schooling in working with children. Still haven't found a child anywhere on the planet that doesn't like to play tag games. Put that out there now. Not one. And did a brief stint in New Zealand, but that was more kind of very low level ski instructing. I think ski instructor, I devalue the profession there if I say that, but again, sort of working with the younger children, sort of getting them enthusiastic, getting them confident on the skis and moving around. And then, came back to the UK, knew that I wanted to work with children in some kind of sport and physical activity capacity. And went and got my FA level 1 coaching badge. Thought that was the right thing to do, and thought that was my sort of entry, beyond my degree into coaching or working with children's sport. And then I remember being given a copy of the long-term athlete development plan, and I immediately felt lost. Completely lost. Totally lost. I'd done this FA badge and it's great. I had a really good time, actually. I thought it was a really good experience. The coaches were fantastic, or the instructors were fantastic. Was given a copy of this long-term athlete development and felt lost because I couldn't work out why everything I was being taught or told was so linear. I didn't understand it, and it was completely contradictory to all the experiences I'd had. In a coaching environment or not, with children around the world, there was nothing linear, I felt, about working with children. There was nothing linear about their experience or their relationship and my own experiences with sport and physical activity. It wasn't you start at this point and you get continuously better at something and then you become this master at it. I'd regress more than I'd progress. I'd see children lose confidence and take 3 steps back before they then progressed. And so I just didn't, it was the case not buying into it. I felt lost because I thought, well, if this is the world, then maybe I don't fit into it. And I think but what it did, it sort of tweaked or enhanced my curiosity in some of the psychology behind it. So the why, what makes children confident one minute and not confident the next? What types of environments sort of breed that confidence in children, what kind of environments don't. The most able children can go from feeling really confident one minute and really sort of up for engaging in that environment, but the next week or the next day they don't. So I'm really quite interested in that. And I guess my career here started when I met a guy called Craig Jones, and I'll give him a shout out because he's a very good friend of mine. And he sort of had this similar philosophy to me, I think. Didn't really buy into the linear side of it, and realised that children and their experiences were more like I put it in a recent report, more like a sort of flock of birds rather than a linear line, sort of changing at the next gust of wind or the next comment that they've heard, or and I guess for the next 10 years after meeting him in sort of, I'm going to get my dates wrong here, sort of 2006, we were working in schools, working in community environments, working across the leisure sector to hopefully, try to create these environments and these experiences that sort of catered for that were, fun, inclusive, engaging. We're less focused on the linear progress, more the, let's engage these children, let's really try and give them a positive experience in physical activity. And that was sometimes through the lens of sport, or I guess what we see as sport, but often through games, and we used to call them playground games, but I'm sure there's a better word for it. But yeah, and really trying to sort of harness those environments and create those environments. I then sort of moved into workforce development and coach development. I always put in inverted commas because I always feel like I wasn't the best coach because I couldn't quite see it. But really spent a few years at my last employer on workforce development. Looking at those, maybe more interested in those softer skills. The rapport building, the relationship building, the I guess the glue between the more technical stuff. But then sort of branching out, doing work for charities like the Royal London Society for Blind People, looking at how we upskill volunteers that have got no or very limited sort of physical activity or sports coaching experience, and then giving them sort of simple tools, importantly the confidence to work with these different groups, and just, I know you and I have talked about it before, but that empowerment, giving someone that platform to go, actually, you know what, I can do this. I've got those basic skills, and I've got the confidence. And I always think that 80% of it is often turning up and having a smile on your face, and then going from there and getting to know that person, and then sort of maybe applying some of the more technical stuff. And then in January 2017, I moved over to UK Active to head up UK Active Kids, which is, UK Active, for anyone who doesn't know, is a not-for-profit health body. We champion physical activity for health, chaired by Baroness Tanny Gray-Thompson, no less, who's a great advocate for the organisation. And my role is to really lead the charge through UK Active Kids on our children and young person oriented projects, campaigns, policy development, workforce development, anything that within our UK Active portfolio that is focused on children and young people. I guess I wave the flag for, which is a very privileged position to be in. I completely there isn't a day that goes by where I don't feel privileged to be in that position and fly the flag for hopefully the sector as best I can. Importantly for children and young people, and for looking to position physical activity for health purposes front and center of people's minds.
So that's a rich. It's like talk about non-linearity. Your journey's non-linear, isn't it?
Completely. My life is non-linear, Stuart, at the moment. with new triplets. Our whole world is non-linear. So yeah, completely buy into that.
Oh, I won't even begin to talk to you about chaos and complexity then, because that's definitely your world.
Our house is the definition of it at the moment.
Wow. Just going back to that point about linearity and long-term athlete development models. So what's interesting about that is I was kind of in my career journey, I was very much at the kind of forefront, I suppose, of sort of driving LTAD. I wrote Golf's long-term athlete development plan strategy. And that it was a very kind of hot potato for a while, wasn't it? Every sport, was writing their long-term athlete development plans and their strategies, and they were mapping it out and all those sorts of things. And I remember at the time I was a very, very strong advocate for this approach. And it probably wasn't because of the linear nature of it. I always had some reservations about that. But I kind of always saw it for what it was, which I think is partly not necessarily the idea behind it, but actually the way it was transmitted. So I actually think a lot of organizations and sports took it very literally and then transmitted it as if to say, right, if child X isn't in this window of development or window of trainability, as they used to call it, that's it. They're done for. They're never. And you can actually still see some of the remnants, if you like, or the historical legacy of that particular way of thinking in existing talent development systems. You see them everywhere. So I've been sort of an advocate for quite some time around, long non-linear player development, non-linear talent development to coincide with non-linear pedagogy. But anyway, go on to that later. So I recognized the non-linearity, but I felt it was more through poor application than it was necessarily the concept. However, what I liked about the idea of long-term athlete development, it said, what it was saying was, at that time, and you may or may not know this, but I was certainly in that policy landscape, and it was like, right, the only thing we really care about is the elite, and the elite, and the elite, elite, and then participation was much more around, we're just going to get people participating, and that's going to be okay, and that'll be fine, and then at some point they're going to make some sort of jump, and that jump will be into the performance world, and then we'll take care of them from there. Well, that never really stuck that comfortably with me, because I sort of felt like, well, actually, no, what we should be doing is we should provide a much, much better experience for kids in their entry point, not just because we want these kids to become elite participants, but actually they should just we should take it much more seriously. We should provide a much better. So what it felt to me like was it was sort of blending the best, all the science and rigor that went with the performance space with the kind of more amateur. I mean, at that time, participation activity was way, way more amateur. It was way, way more in its infancy. But it sort of said, look, let's take a performance mindset and apply it into a participation context, not from the perspective of we want to produce participants, although that's kind of how most people did do it, but more from the perspective of let's just make our experiences way, way better. Let's put some emphasis there. And so I suppose that was how I saw it anyway. And the fact that there was sort of a linear model, I think, helped people to conceive of that as an idea. And so therefore, what it ended up doing is it actually brought more resource and emphasis into the participation landscape. So now you see a kind of at least a balancing of the investment. Anyway, long story, but just be interested on your reflections of that and any kind of perceptions or experiences that you had around that space.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think for me, because I was never going to be that elite coach, mm-hmm. In the eyes going up, and every time I think I saw that development system, I thought, oh God, I'm not gonna. It's not me. I don't want to progress through that. But what I really struggled with was that I didn't, as a practitioner, working on that level of, maybe entry level, those children, the participation bit of it, the end of it. Where was the value for the practitioner there? Where was the progression? Where was the, I felt like I was hitting ceilings very often, and which meant that you either progressed or left the sector. And I saw brilliant people that were doing brilliant stuff on playgrounds, in community centres, leisure centres, but had nowhere to go. But so what we ended up doing, we ended up losing really good practitioners, in those environments. And I thought, wow, we're missing a trick here. Let's keep hold of those people. Let's value those people. Let's recognise that participation part, that bit that's given that children such rich experience. That you're right. You said that performance mindset, but the participation end. We need to recognise that. It's really important. And for these children, it's their week, it's their day, it's their it's their favourite thing. And let's show them that physical activity and sport can be such a positive experience. Here, right, and you can continue doing this. Yeah. But the issue is if we keep, you lose that good practitioner, and then it becomes disjointed, and the quality is not consistent. So that, I think that's where I saw more of a horizontal line than a vertical one, and I thought, well, this is where I am. This is where I'm most comfortable. This is where I get most reward. This is where I, to see children in these environments was really rewarding for me, and that's what I wanted to do and continue and pursue. And I hope that I've imparted some of that philosophy in the places that I've been and worked. And that kind of, I think you said that if they haven't progressed to the next stage, they're done for. Well, we all know they're not. And let's recognise that sometimes children need an off-ramp. Sometimes children need that support mechanism. If we think about sort of trajectory management, they're not always going to stay in the same sport, or they're not always going to stay in the same group of friends. So we need to be prepared to make sure that there are high quality practitioners, high quality environments, positive, meaningful experiences at every level, so that when children do go into that off ramp or do sort of regress or whatever it is, whether major life events sometimes dictate how physically active children are, and if you move house or families change, you end up in an environment that isn't your local football club. So I think we just need to be prepared to accommodate children on every level and make sure that's matched with positive experiences through those practitioners, and that's what I was really trying to champion, I suppose.
And actually, I'm fully on board with that. I mean, I think one of the, again, it goes back to the point around, I think, a misapplication. I mean, a lot of people railed against LTAD at the time, and it then became, it was a very hot potato for a very short period of time, and then it almost became like another 4-letter word, and nobody spoke about it, So there was all this emphasis on it. I mean, one of the things for me that was really exciting about the idea of it was it put the idea of, for example, physical literacy. Fundamentals, that became a thing. Now, again, I have serious question marks about the application of fundamentals, because I think it was done in a very mechanistic way and with one eye on elite performance as an outcome. It also had the idea, it also brought with it the idea of early and late specialization. Right. That was a conversation that wasn't happening at all. Ironically, I think the legacy of LTAD is hyper specialization. Sadly, even though we know more about it, I see less late specialization. It was probably better when we didn't know anything, because kids just played loads of sports. And then we started to know stuff. We wrote LTAD pathways, and now everybody's got to be in our system, otherwise they're going to lose out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it goes back to that richness of experiences, that variety of experiences, you talk about fundamentals, but, I see physical activity, and I think as soon as physical activity becomes just an answer for physical development, then I think we're completely undervaluing its purpose and value in society and life. I think physical activity, sport has got more to offer, or just as much. I'll get shot down here by the academics and scientists, but just as much to offer around social development, emotional development, and mental and cognitive development. It really is. And I'm staying on brand here at UK Active. For us, it's crucial, crucial to society. It's crucial to human development, because, it doesn't matter what government strategy you look at, whether it's the civil society strategy, the loneliness strategy, whether it's, sporting future, get people together, get them moving around, put them in positive environments, get them socializing, get them connecting with each other, and we've got some good stuff happening there. And to replicate that on every level, I think is really important, and children can benefit massively from that. But that practitioner, that facilitator, that influencer, whether it's mum or dad, or whether it's someone in your school or in your community club, is the catalyst, I feel, and just to value that person on every level is really important to me.
Fantastic. I mean, wholeheartedly support that. Just flicking back then to that kind of what you're doing at UK Active Kids. I was at a conference, the UK Active Summit, some time ago, and you mentioned earlier on your chair, Tanny Gray, Baroness Tanny Gray Thompson. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes. And she gave an opening keynote address that was very, very powerful, and very hard hitting, and there were a range of different statistics, not all of which I can remember, but the one that stuck in my mind, and I've replayed several times since, is children in the UK spend less time outside every day than prison inmates. 75% of children in the UK spend less time outside than prison inmates. Yeah. And I'm like, I mean, it just impregnated itself into my kind of brain as like, it's like it stays there now, just lodged away, going, oh my God, what the hell is happening to the world? Yeah. And I know you're very much at the kind of vanguard of alongside many other organisations, sort of trying to tackle this. What do we do about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's an alarming stat, isn't it? And I think that the appeal of getting children outdoors is there to be seen. But I think the real appeal is you're more likely to be active when you're outdoors. And if it wouldn't be an alarming stat if they were indoors all day being active and socialising with friends, but they're obviously not. So I think that you're right. Tanny delivered quite a barnstorming speech. And she's very good at that. And she does that because she's very passionate about this agenda, and she's very passionate, as we all are here, about this notion of physical activity being a public health priority, not a nice to have, not something if you can only afford it, but something that everyone can engage in. We provided a nice platform actually. So on that day, our national summit, we through UK Active Kids we published and released our sort of second Generation Inactive report. It was a quite a comprehensive piece of work. It was essentially a reflection of a public consultation that sort of adopted a socio-ecological approach, sort of starting with the child, and then sort of layering out from there through, their immediate social environment, looking at the organisations and institutions around them, looking at their community, whether it's physical or social, and then looking at broader public policy and sort of asking a few questions to different groups of people. So, what are the challenges and barriers for children's physical activity or children to be physically active? But then importantly, what are the opportunities? So had a grand, a big public online consultation, which was great, which was very insightful. Over 100, submissions coming in of all kinds of people on the street, people from universities. That was then complemented by a national program of focus groups, including lots of children up and down the country, which was certainly the most insightful. Primary school age, secondary school age, sort of FE age, teachers, some PE teachers, some non-PE teachers, academics, health psychologists. It was great. Tanny organised a parliamentary roundtable for us to get the sort of the insight from sort of policymakers, and then other key contributors. And I think what it enabled us to do is really take quite a can-do approach to some of the things that we might be able to do about it. I think there's a consensus and a massively growing evidence base that physical activity is brilliant for us. In many ways, and we need to get people moving more. And so we didn't want to repeat that. What we wanted to do is to look at some tangible opportunities and solutions. So ranging, anything from. I won't go through them all, but one of the key sort of themes that came out were, how do we influence that social environment around children and young people? Whether it's family and family support, knowing how important that role of the parent guardian is, but actually how that role differs, dependent on the age of the child. As the younger children are, it seemed that the role that a parent played, that the active role they play was very important. So how active they actually were with the child, sort of being that role modelling approach to sort of the adolescents and teenagers we spoke to, that parents sort of adopted that more sort of facilitating role, getting to activity opportunities and back, sort of having a more positive attitude towards physical activity behaviours. So really, really interested in that. And it was quite a journey actually, because I then thought back to my childhood and how important my dad was to my physical activity behaviours, and now I'm the dad, and the thought of the sacrifice that he made, taking me to football coaching on a midweek and games on a Saturday, games on a Sunday. It's quite that family mechanism came out as a really strong theme for us in influencing children's physical activity behaviours. But within that social environment, peer influence was really key as well, and that area is really interesting to me. What social environments can we set up to engage and sustain these active behaviours, whether it's going to a football club, I keep saying football, or hockey, cricket, or just engaging in other physical activity environments, and peer support and peer led environments and activities became quite prominent in what we were hearing. So I think from a practitioner point of view, it's how do we set that up? How do we create those environments that breed confidence, that create this feeling that you're not being judged, but there is that peer support. But because clearly the older children get, the more that becomes an important factor in their behaviours. And that's not just physical activity. Peer influence clearly has an impact on other behaviours, smoking, drinking, all these types of things. So how do we harness that, influence that, and then use that maybe to promote more healthy behaviours, in this case physical activity, and then we built out from there. It was a really good process all the way up to looking at how do we work with local authorities to stitch and weave physical activity into everyday life, creating these active networks around children and families, making it more attractive for mums and dads and children to go down to their local park at the weekend. It's not just about creating a facility, it's just as much about creating that positive connection that people have with that facility and or open space. Are there other families going to be there? Is it accessible? Is it safe? Is it lit? Sort of thinking beyond just the physical. Really interesting, and it sort of led us to some of those key messages in Tanny's speech. Children aren't going outside as much. Let's do something about it. And we had 17 recommendations, but here's our recommendations on how to do that. We don't have all the answers, but here's an opportunity to get under the skin maybe and look at some tangibles that we can really start to develop.
And through that process, then, have you talk about sort of the creation of active networks and stuff like that. Are there any kind of examples that you can think of that sort of bring this to life in terms of models of good practice that you've either seen or heard about?
Yeah, no, it's actually really recently. So we have supported a project with Team GB and this beacon school approach. So there are 45 schools at Team GB through their Get Set program have identified across the UK as beacon schools, and their role is to connect themselves to their local community, to get their children and families more active inside and outside of their school, but actually serve as a beacon within that community. Our role in that is to connect our network. And at UK Active, our network is vast. We've got 4,000 members. Lots of those are these really great leisure centres and sports centres up and down the country. Our role in that is to just facilitate the links between that school and their local leisure networks. How do we make that more? How do we facilitate that conversation? How do we connect a school that might be struggling? I don't know, to get swimming lessons off the ground? How do we connect them to their local leisure centre? How do we? Let's find out. What the latent demand is in that leisure centre. When are the quiet times? And can we connect the school to that? And can we get them using that facility? And then going outside of the school gates, and actually looking outside of the school gates was a key theme in our report. Children's needs don't stop as soon as the school bell rings. Their health needs continue. They need to continue to be active. They need to continue to socialise and connect with other people. Children children from families on free school meals don't have any more money in August than they do in January. But largely, they're often left to figure it out during the summer holidays. It's a real issue. So I think it's for us, it was sort of connecting that and looking at not schools in isolation to community. How do we bring those two together so that children always have this always on offer, I suppose.
Fantastic. I think there's so much there. I mean, obviously my ears pricked up when you mentioned the taking of a socio-ecological approach to tackling inactivity. Because obviously, that's a pretty recurring theme throughout this podcast around manipulation of constraints to bring about behavior change. And And so I hear what you're saying around, for example, peer influencers. I certainly hear what you're saying around family influencers. I hear what you're saying around that kind of external environment, around accessibility and opening them access to facilities and all those sorts of stuff. But it feels to me like there's an elephant in our chat room, which is when they get there, and when they get to the experience, there might be somebody there who's in charge of that experience. And I feel slightly concerned about what that might look like, because one of my obvious missions, obviously, is to try and help make great experiences, and to do that through great coaching and great and get more people with the kind of skills, attributes, qualities required to enthuse, excite, energize, and get young people really kind of like absolutely, enthralled by the idea of physical activity. Let me take you back to something you said right at the start. You were very passionate about young people, about your sporting experience as a child, and you gave a shout out to the football club that you were part of, and then as a teenager that stopped. Why?
Yeah, good question. I kind of preempted this question actually, and I started to think about it before today, and I didn't know you were going to ask it. Obviously, I think there were two key influences. One was the social environment for me. So it was adolescence is a tough time for anyone.
Yeah.
It always blows my mind that the age in which we transition children from primary school to secondary school, it's almost as if you could write an age down where you don't want to transition people. You would write, onset adolescence, onset of puberty. Leave them where they are. They need a couple of years just to find out who they are and what their body's doing and what their brain is doing. I struggled socially, and I think sport. So I grew up in so we're talking sort of early 90s now. My physical activity options were sport based. So local football club, local cricket club, again, shout out Mistley Cricket Club, brilliant. But because they were so reliant on social dynamics, and because socially I was struggling, I fell out of that. So I loved the sport, and I was pretty able, technically, physically, but the social construct around me fell apart. So therefore I fell out of that. So, and because there didn't seem to be another option for me, mm-hmm. I couldn't rejoin. So that there was no off ramp for me. There was no trajectory management. So and then going back to your point, the people, the person facilitating those experiences changed. It went from sort of junior football where I remember my coaches, they were absolutely fantastic, and they were more interested, were just as interested in the chats and the fun games that we played before the matches, just as much as the match itself. It was all about the process. It wasn't about I got really lucky with great people around me. And then I did come across something actually in secondary school, a PE teacher that just was all about the outcome. And I won't name him, but it became a very negative experience. And I was never the strongest. I run now because I was always quite good at running, but not never fast, just so I can just run for a long time. But they didn't recognise that as a talent or a skill, and there were groups of us that dropped out. I didn't do GCSE PE, which was my love. I went into secondary school thinking if there's one GCSE I know I'm going to do, it's going to be physical education, and I didn't do it because of the people leading it and the way in which it was delivered. So a combination of that. It feels like a bit of a sob story, but I think it's important for us to recognise that there are just because a child is good at something. And they have a love for something doesn't necessarily mean they're going to continue to do it, because there are other constructs around them that massively influence it. And in my case, it was that social environment and that key influencer, that activity influence, whatever you want to call it. In this case, a PE teacher that let me down on that. So and then I fell away from it. So which is why I'm so interested and slightly going off point here, but which is why I'm so interested in this sort of construct that's bigger than just the physical in physical activity. You know, the confidence, the motivation, the knowledge and understanding, that disposition to step into a physical activity environment. I'm convinced it's more than just the physical. It has to be more than that, because I was physically quite able, but because of those other things, mainly the social environment, I didn't have the confidence to get into those environments. And again, it does sound like a sob story, but yeah, it enables me to reflect on it, and then has enabled me to then apply it maybe into some of the environments that I've worked in.
It's not a sob story, and actually, in many ways, it correlates, I think, with many people's stories who work in the industry. Because, I mean, certainly a massive driver of mine has always been a desire to increase opportunity and increase access. I fell into sport by accident.
Right.
I had, a pretty good PE experience. When I look back, I think how lucky I was to have the PE experience that I had. Legendary teacher by the name of Alan Kopak, who was just fantastic at connecting with young people and what they wanted to do. And then that led me into sort of more traditional sports settings. But I'd always been in and around sport, but never been a bit like you, never really with any kind of prowess. But it was always about increasing opportunity, increasing, getting rid of barriers and allowing people. So I remember, I was one of those kids who I loved tennis, loved it, got pretty good. Mostly self-taught. I had on the side of my bed, I had a falling apart Bjorn Borg book of tennis, sort of self-taught tennis, right? I was one of those kids that certainly in the summer, and certainly when Wimbledon came on, I'd be up at the school tennis courts and I'd be there at 9 a.m. and I wouldn't leave until 9 p.m, and I would literally drag myself off the court and fall into bed. I loved it, right? I play all day long. Could never access a coach. I even got myself an LTA rating once, right? Which was required to play in competitions. I got that serious, just me and a couple of mates. But I didn't have parents who could take me to tournaments and pay for coaching and pay for, all the time to get there and rackets and everything else. I was just massively green. Why I got myself an LTA rating, I have no idea. But, so for me, I had all those sorts of things, and I've always thought, well, how many other kids out? And I wasn't particularly bad off, I wouldn't say I was, on the bread line or anything like that. But I'm thinking, how many other kids are out there who love an activity and can't access it? Mm. And then let's translate that back down into its smallest sense. How many kids are out there who can't even conceive of embracing physical activity because their immediate social environment doesn't facilitate it? So, I mean, that for me is a big driver there around how can we create these kind of social environments. So I've always felt, for example, and I've been doing this for a long time, I've been in this business for a while, and we quite often do programs. Oh, we've got to do a program. Here's a program. We've got to do a program. And the bit that's missing, in my opinion, is the people bit, because it's the people bit that makes the difference. And I think it's almost like, oh yeah, we're going to need some people to do this, right? Where are we going to find them from? Oh, them, they'll do. And I just think that people just sort of misunderstand the difference between they'll do and we need this kind of individual with this kind of behavior and this kind of outlook and this kind of fundamental philosophy about youth sport experience. Yeah. You know what I mean? I feel like that's missing somewhere.
I totally agree. And people make the difference. It needs to be the motto on many on many strategies and posters and get it.
Funnily enough, we've just signed up to it. So we had a session recently within my team at work, and that's now our kind of, if you like, our why. People made a difference.
I totally agree with you. My one of my real bugbears I used to hear is, like you said, you throw any, just get a group of people and put them in. That I always used to hear this. Well, actually, when I used to work with, across leisure centres, community centres, upskilling staff to work with children, and I'd ask them what they do in the site, and they say, "Oh, I just work with children." Just.
Yeah.
What you mean you're working with the most important cohort of people on the planet. That's what you're doing. But as a practitioner, they probably they didn't feel valued, and they certainly probably weren't paid, particularly well. And so, and that resonate, that filters down. And I think we need to change that around and understand that people do make the difference. And we've got this very vulnerable cohort of people here, very impressionable, that we've got an opportunity, given the means, to set off in whatever non-linear way, on a lifelong sort of physical activity journey. And it's not going to be a smooth road, but people along that journey will help them. And we can't underestimate, how much of an influence those people have on anyone, really. And we could talk about obviously the adult population as well, but it's a massive part of that physical activity journey. And making sure those people have got the right skills. We've worked on those sort of the new professional standards, and recognizing that the types of skills that person needs, recognizing the types of environments that person needs to be able to set up, because it maybe only takes one negative experience to put a child off coming back, and that experience is largely down, and the responsibility of that person in there. And I think we absolutely we need to equip those people properly. We've harness the enthusiasm that people have for working with children and young people, and really set up and ensure, if we can, but really try and facilitate these meaningful, positive environments so children are chomping at the bit to come back. And I think that is, that's from the physical environment. It's children know when they're safe and not safe. They know when things are in control and not in control. We've talked about the social environment a lot. I won't bang on too much about that. It's clearly an area that I'm passionate about, but that, and I'm not saying any of this is easy, but again, factoring in that peer support, that making sure children have time to interact with each other, the ability to talk to each other and work with each other. It's amazing what that does to someone's confidence. Setting up an environment that sort of they feel confident to take risks. You get rewarded for taking risks. I listened to another podcast, the other day, and I can't remember the lady's name.
Other podcasts are available.
And it was a lady that, I forget her name, I shouldn't know her name now, but she set up an organisation in the States called Coding for Girls. Girls What Code, or Girls That Code. It's fantastic. And she said that the big problem she saw is that girls are taught to be perfect, boys are taught to be brave. And that really kind of triggered something in me. And if you are taught to think that you need to be perfect all the time, then you're not going to risk anything because you don't want to make yourself vulnerable. But if you're taught to be brave and you're taught to take risks, then you're gonna be rewarded for that. And I think there's something in that. And I think if we can create this workforce of people that are able to create this environment where children feel confident to take risks, feel confident to speak to someone else. And that risk can be on different levels. Of course it can. Try a new skill, try a new sport, speak to a new person. It's amazing what we can do with that, or maybe amazing what we could do with that. And I think it comes down to that person. It comes down to that person setting that environment, setting that tone, setting that right atmosphere. And it starts probably before the session. Is there something that person can do before people get to that session or environment or whatever it is? It certainly obviously continues into that experience, but then it probably goes on beyond it as well. What's the follow-up? What's the well done? What's the reward? What's the interaction with mum, dad? Where's that connection? So that I think it was in the podcast for Parents Week podcast, and we're talking about that dreaded car journey home. But let's arm mum and dad with 3 really cool points that they can talk to, their son or daughter about on the way home. So it's not just I think the guy said, did you score today? No. Okay. And then there's no more conversation. It's, maybe that's still going to be a question. Everyone loves scoring goals, but here's 3 points that you can talk about. It's really cool. This is what I did today. So I think there's a big role. I'm not saying it's an easy role, but, and because it's not an easy role, we need to, recognize that person, that practitioner, that influencer needs those right skills.
You mentioned my little boy at the start of this show, and It's funny enough, obviously after that experience, I'm very mindful of making sure I'm engaged. But anyway, what's really interesting is that he goes to rugby now. He's just started doing rugby. So tonight, in fact, I'll be going to take him along, and it's about what is it, half a mile away. So we walk there, or we'll go on bikes or scooters or whatever. And but I quite like walking, actually, because we get an opportunity to chat on the way and on the way back. And it was really nice, kind of how the how the conversation goes around either what happened in the session, or just kind of the things he was talking to somebody about. And he was telling me about how brilliant it was that he brought down, I'm trying to remember the name of the I'm going to call him Tommy or whatever, but he's the big kid in the group, and like, I brought him down. Now the reality was there was about 7 kids hanging on to this child, right? And eventually he fell to the ground, and Evan was one of them. But in his mind, he brought him down, right? And that's great, isn't it? It's great to hear. Oh yeah, that was brilliant, wasn't it? Yeah. So there is just something so magical about that space, and it's made me reflect a little bit. And just listening to you talk earlier on about parents and the role we play, it doesn't always necessarily have to be that we're role models or we're doing it ourselves necessarily, because parents can have physical limitations or challenges themselves or whatever it might be. But it goes back to something that Nick Hurd said from Relentless Optimism. You just got to notice them. Just notice. Yeah. So when I had the problem with Evan, was he didn't think I was noticing him because I was busy chatting to somebody about being a sports parent. How ironic. But in that context, it's just like, I noticed that. Oh, I tell you what else I noticed. What else I noticed was that when you got the ball, you had a good opportunity to pass, and you gave a pass. Or I noticed that you were running really hard and getting stuck in and trying really hard. It's just what you noticed.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think there's something in that, isn't there? There's something in the development or facilitating that space, that social space, that connection between that enables whether it is a parent and a child, or a sibling, an older sibling, or a grandparent or a guardian, whoever it is, whoever that sort of that influencer, that sort of caregiver is, recognizing that space before or after that physical activity experience is just as important as the experience itself, and you're right. I think, and what came out of Generation Active 2, the report, was that role of that parent or guardian or carer can take guise in many means. You're right. It could be the active part of it, but not everyone can be active like that. So can it be that recognition? Can it be that conversation? And and it's amazing what a walk or a bike ride or something other than just sitting in a car or sitting face to face can do to create a positive conversation. That sort of that ability. It's quite liberating, isn't it? Walking and talking. But giving parents the confidence and the knowledge to recognise that space, I think, is really important. And I see it now with my children. They're only 2.5. It always seems weird saying they as a plural for 2.5, but yeah, 3 2.5-year-olds at home, and I see it now. My dad, their granddad bought them balance bikes for their 2nd birthday, and they will zip. They'll jump back on it more positively and with more eagerness if I recognise or say something to them that recognises how good they were last time. And so it's simple. It's really simple stuff. And actually, we've, again, not a sob story, but we're one of our children has just been fitted with glasses. Freddie, he's rocking the glasses. He looks very cool, and he's adapted to them well. But because of it, he's very physically able, just as able as 2 other brothers, but it's knocked his confidence a bit because he falls over a bit more than his 2 other brothers because his sight is not as good as theirs. And so it takes more from me to get him back on that bike. And that's not me. That sometimes takes the guise of me getting on my bike, because I know if I get on my bike and get the helmet on and he wants to do what Dad does, but it sometimes takes an arm around the shoulder to say, you were great last time. Well done, Freddie. You were zipping around, and so you can see it builds his confidence in a realm that he may not have been as confident as two other brothers. And we've got this, as you can imagine, it's like a live social experiment in our house at the moment, bringing up these children, and seeing, and it's fascinating though to see their individual differences when they've really got no right to have any individual differences, because they're all being grown up in the same way. But of course they are, because they're different people, they're different human beings, and they've all got, they've got different makeup. So really fascinating, and like I said, I see it as early as then, and that the importance of that space. And I think maybe we can another time unfold what that space is and the construct of that space, and make it easier. First of all, recognize it, and once we recognize how important it is, look at what that is as a construct, and then arm parents, guardians, siblings with tools to facilitate that space, because it is obviously really important.
And there's a load of great literature out there. There's a load of fantastic blogs. There's a load of fantastic providers. I spoke to Gordon McClelland, working with parents in sport, but I've also, Richard Shorter from Non-Perfect Dad. I mean, I love his message actually, and he's actually got a book out recently that I've just got hold of, which has got some really good, simple, practical things just to think about around, what to explore on the journey. But you've made me mindful of something. I was talking about this last night I was doing a workshop last night down in Kent with a group of intrepid coaches. Didn't get back till 12:30, so it was a pretty intense evening for me. But anyway, it was a great experience having a conversation with these coaches. And one of the things I was talking to them about is praise. And I think this is something that's really important. And I learned this from Carol Dweck with the whole growth mindset thing. And it's something that people have, I think, lost sight of, which is when she did her research into growth mindset and all that sort of stuff, a lot of people didn't realize that it's actually based because she had real concerns about the growth of the kind of the self-esteem movement. This idea that, if you tell children that they're great at everything, and you tell them that they can be anything and all that sort of stuff, that they'll go through life, and they'll be magically successful. And she feels that actually that whole movement and the whole kind of positive parenting agenda may have, or may be playing a role in some of the things that we're now beginning to see with children struggling with issues around mental health, children struggling with issues around, kind of managing themselves on social media, comparisons with others, all these sorts of different challenges. And one of the things that she said, and it sort of stuck with me, and I use it in lots of contexts, is well, one thing in our language and our narrative is always sort of, praising them for being, for their outcomes. It goes back to what you said earlier on, being very outcome focused, and talking to children about what they can do and the things that they're successful at. And then they begin to equate their success or otherwise at an activity or anything as being linked to their self-worth. They call this idea of contingent self-worth. Their self-worth is contingent upon their success in school, their success in sport, their success at music, their success at riding a bike or whatever. And so one of the things that I've had to really check, and I find it very difficult because it just comes very unnaturally to me, is when my daughter comes to me with some paint on a piece of paper, right? There's paint on a piece of paper, and apparently it represents something. Yeah. She's a bit older now, so she's got a bit better. But at the time, we've all been there, haven't we? Here's a piece of paper with paint on it. It represents something. Of course it does. I have no idea what it represents. And the natural instinct, isn't it, is to go, wow, that's fantastic. Wow, let's put it on the fridge. Yeah. And then the fridge is covered with pieces of paper with paint on, right? And it sort of becomes a bit meaningless because they're just coming then for the praise. And so something that Reed Maltby said to me, Coach Reed over in the UK, it's got a great TED talk about communication and leaving echoes that he never wants to hear. And he said this to me, and it stuck with me again. This one bored into my brain as well. Is that he says things like, so for example, he doesn't say to his children, "I'm very proud of you." It's not about him. He says, "You should be very proud. You should be proud of yourself." And it's saying, because that's the point. It's about them. Yeah. And they should be proud. It's a recognition. It's noticing. I noticed something that you should be proud of. I hope you are, because then the implication is that they're proud. I know it's a subtle dynamic, but it's important. And it comes back to this point as well. So when my daughter came to me with paper with paint on, instead of going, wow, it's amazing, I'd act a little bit more neutrally. And I'd go, tell me all about it.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that? How did you make the colours work like that? What did you use to make the painting? And so it's actually the act of noticing and talking and the engagement about the experience and whatever it is she's created. I'm not going to put value on it.
Yeah.
And it's actually a very interesting, different dialogue that we have now.
I think it's really interesting. And I think two things. One, that notion of not I'm very proud of it, you should be proud of yourself. So it gives it back to the child, right? It gives it back to the person. Yeah. And it makes it about, a bit like my experience in physical activity. Physical activity became about my need to fit into other people's expectations, and that became unenjoyable. So I lost it. But I refound love for it when I started being active, and I started playing football again, actually, for myself, because I found it enjoyable again, it just became. It was not a conscious thing, but mentally it became for myself, not for other people around me. And that probably comes with age and maturity, but similar sort of thing. And then I think that probably comes back to making something meaningful, because you're right. If a child draws, paints a picture, loosest sense of the word. I've got plenty of those in my house at the moment. Pumpkins at the moment are the
pumpkins,
definitely just orange splots on paper, but I'm going with it. Ace 3, ace 3. 3's the magic number. If they're just doing it for my reaction, then that's probably not that meaningful. But but you're right. If you then explore that, I mean, it's hard to explore it too deep with a 2.5-year-old. But if you go back to the meaning of it, the purpose of it, and what the story is behind it, and I think that resonates back into. We can put that back into a physical activity construct or a sporting environment. That notion of something being meaningful. Is there a purpose to it? Is it valuable? It's all very well having movement competencies, but unless you can apply it in a relevant movement context, then is it worth it? I don't know. Again, I'll get shot down by high-level coaches here, but I think making things meaningful and purposeful to people, and adults and children alike. But if there's a purpose to it, and if I can apply that to something that's relevant in the environment around me, whether it's the social environment or the physical environment, then I think then we get that maybe a better sense of self-worth and that growth mindset. And again, it goes back to the process, not the outcome. Let's recognize that. So I'll make a note of that. The next time Freddie shows underconfidence riding his bike, I won't tell him he was very good last time. I'll pick into why he was good and his doing. But no, I totally agree. And for me, it brings it back to that. What does meaningful mean? What is the purpose of this? And if we can make that experience, those skills learned meaningful, so they can apply it in a relevant context, then I think that growth mindset or that progression will be quite apparent.
Yeah, and listen, I'm not saying it's not a parenting lesson. I am in no position to be giving anybody a parenting lesson. But it's just something that I've discovered on the journey. But it's interesting because I've applied it in the coaching context. Dweck's work was, it came down to simple uses of language. You're smart or you worked hard. And those fundamental differences had a profound effect on the approach and the attitude those young people had towards overcoming obstacles. If it's about the effort you put in and the energy and the strategy that you use, then that's something I can get on board with. Yeah, I'll have a go at that. Oh, something's difficult, I'll keep going. But when it's about the outcome, as in, oh, you're smart because you did this, so it's linked to you as an individual, then it's like, oh, now I come up with an obstacle that might actually affect that self-image that's been created. Well, I'm going to avoid it. Yeah. Or I'm going to come up with excuses and problems. And, she's replicated the research several times. And now, okay, I'm not saying it's as simple as that, but it did make me think, going back to social environment, about the things that we prize and the messages that we send. Yeah. And for me, that's where I think we've maybe gone a little bit wrong. So you just mentioned a minute ago, physical literacy and physical competence. And there's a body of research out there which and again, I'm gonna incur the wrath and the ire of some of the researchers, right? But there's a body of research.
We both will now. Yeah.
We both will. Yeah, let's do it together. It's great. I've got a partner in crime. There you go. I'm in trouble. There's a body of research that says there is a link between, or there is a correlation between movement competence, physical competence, and lifelong physical activity. Now, I am slightly concerned I think that's that's a bit of a leap, right? So for me, so what we've now started to do is, we're going to get people to be able to run, jump, throw, bound, hop, skip, and they go through almost like this process of calisthenics in order to become more physically competent, because that's going to make them lifelong physical activity. I'm sorry, you're missing the point. Why do people fall in love with physical activity? Because it's just the funnest thing possible, right? And usually that's because there's somebody in front of them going, woohoo, look at this. And everyone goes, oh my God. And for me, what's been lost is it's something we're doing to kids. I've even got, there are some sniffy academics out there talking about the Daily Mile and saying, not sure about it. And I've got to say, I've got a few reservations myself. Are we just doing it to them because it sort of looks good? I mean, this is where I do get into trouble. I don't know. I'm just asking the question. My point being that we may be missing something, which is joy, love, commitment, passion, friendships, all of those other things that you've mentioned today, social and emotional connections, and finding those experiences, either through play or exploration. And so I feel that's why I'm so passionate about environments, and I'm so passionate about the kind of the non-invasive nature of a constraints-led approach, let's say, because for me, what that's doing is saying, here's a space for you to explore. And while you're exploring, we're going to discover the ways in which you might be able to achieve these sorts of things, all the different ways. Then you can then decide for yourself which is the one that's going to be, that might help, might not help, might be something. But it's exploratory. Yeah. It's genuinely. It's like going on a journey, as opposed to somebody coming along and saying, "This is movement competence, and your job is to comply with it." Or adhere to it. It's like, it just feels wrong to me. I don't know why. It just feels wrong, even if the evidence suggests otherwise.
It feels wrong and it feels boring, doesn't it? I think I'll get shot. We are going to get shot down now, but I think you're right. I think what we need to avoid is things becoming a checklist. Just because you can, hop, sprint, bounce.
Yeah.
They've done that. Great. Next, it's like, well, no. There needs to be more than that. And just going back to my previous points, I think for as long as being physically active has only ever leaned on for the physical benefits, then we've had a shocker. We've missed the point. I think, it's and being active, playing sport will always be undervalued and under prioritized at every level, because I think we're missing that whole realm of other things that need to be in place and that people benefit from. I would put social sort of social and emotional health and development up there as two of the things that I think sport and physical activity, benefit people the most. Done in the right way, within those positive, meaningful experiences with the right practitioner. The benefits that derive from that, I've seen it, are great. But if all we're doing is programming with a checklist of physical achievements, then we'll miss all that. And it may happen in isolation because you happen to get a really good person that understands all the other constructs and domains, but it'll happen in spite of the system, not because of the system. And if we want something to happen at scale, then we need the system to support it, and to recognise all that other stuff around. Like I say, I feel like a broken record, but that the social, the emotional, the cognitive, the mental side of it, then that's the game, isn't it? Then we're really creating these quite exceptional environments, and maybe the Daily Mile is good for some children, but it won't be good for others, because they won't buy into it, and it won't be for them anymore. So, and I think it's like you said, it's going back to right. Well, let's create an environment. Let's let children explore it. They are the best at creating games. They're absolutely phenomenal at it. Given that that realm of autonomy, and that great person sort of facilitating that environment if there needs to be a person there. But I think you're right. It's that let's again, as one of your last points was about, we create another program. Well, let's just not create programs with just these physical checklists. Let's consider the whole picture here. And have children chomping at the bit to come back next time. And that, like I said, that autonomy we give them, and a massive message in Generation Active 2 was about giving a voice to the audience. This nothing about us without us. Bring them into it. And that can be done on different levels. I know Debbie Salisbury listens to the podcast, and big advocate of that. And they don't. It's not like they have to write your business strategy, but just ask them what they want. Some of the biggest insight we had in bringing the report together was from children and young people themselves. And to the point where at the National Summit, the event that you referenced earlier, we had a 13-year-old student from a high school down the road, because I thought, well, we can have. It's great to have academics and it's great to have experts in their field, but let's hear it. Let's really hear it from the people that we're trying to engage here, because they will let us know. Give them, it gives us insight. It gives them ownership. Enables them to connect with what they're doing, whether it's within the current moment and experience, or something a bit more strategic, and they become advocates for it. Who doesn't? They feel like it's theirs, right? They'll become an advocate for it. They'll convince other people to do it, and I guess that then links back to that those peer networks and that peer support. If your mates are saying this is brilliant, you're gonna do it, or at least you're gonna give it a go. I think this it's a massive area, isn't it? But checklists don't cut it. I think there's more to it, and that's why I am particularly interested in this realm of physical literacy. I haven't, like many people, haven't quite gotten under the skin of it. But what I'm interested in is this sort of construct that is greater than the sum of its parts. I think there's a lot there, and I think there's certainly more than just the physical side of it. So that social environment, that the tone, the atmosphere of the environments in which children are in, I think has a big part to play in that.
100%, and I think I love that phrase. I'd forgotten about that, about Generation Inactive, nothing about us without us, because I think there's a lot of conversations I'm involved in the moment around the nature of player-centeredness or athlete-centeredness, and sometimes people, I think, confuse player-led or athlete-led with athlete-centeredness. Yeah. So you can still the coach or the provider can still be providing the activity for the individual, but it can still be player athlete centered or participant centered if you've taken into consideration the wants and needs of those people in front of you, and that's one of the important elements that often sometimes is missing, and your experience is exactly that. You said you were in an environment in secondary school where it was all about the outcome, and the things that you were good at weren't recognized, and so therefore you kind of fell away from that, something that was very important to you. Now, fortunately, we kept you within the industry so that you could bring the passion and energy back. But so it's formative, maybe it was deliberate, who knows? But we all laugh at there's that classic clip, isn't it, of the PE teacher in the film Kes, but it's real. Yeah. It's real. The reason everyone laughs at it and it resonates so much is because it's exactly how most people's experiences have been. The point I was trying to make is, and you make a very good point about the Daily Mile, you're absolutely right. I think the issue people have isn't the concept, it's the implementation. So, there are calls for this should be mandatory for all children. Well, no, it shouldn't. Because like I said, it might not be for everyone, but it should be an option. Should 100% be an option, shouldn't it? Shouldn't we provide it? Shouldn't it be a provision for all children if that's what they want to do, or it's something that they want to get involved in? Absolutely, yeah. So that's the difference, I think, isn't it? Is when you hear people saying this should become mandatory, then I think that's when people tend to. I think for sport and physical, don't get me wrong, I think sport and physical activity should be an option for everybody, and there should be far more of it, and it should happen every single day in whatever form Of course, if I had, if I became, heaven forbid, if I ever was to come to power, that's the first policy shift immediately.
Yeah.
Physical activity every day for all children, in the absolute funnest, best way possible, and a complete mixed diet. And so it's not force feeding. It's just, let's create something that suits everybody, and then let's wrap that into the school day. 100%.
And absolutely, and
that's my entire manifesto. I've got anything else. It's like the Green Party, but it's for sport. I'm the sport party.
If this was a video, you'd now drop the mic. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm standing now.
I think so. And just going back to that you referenced the Daily Mile, but these types of programs, ask the stakeholders that you're trying to engage. One of the guys up at Loughborough University, a lady called Anna Chalkley, has done some great research around school-based running programs, and the success and implementation seems in part around buy-in of those stakeholders. It's not about just parachuting in another program and saying this is mandatory or not. It's these are your stakeholders, and who are the stakeholders here? We've got the teachers, we've got other school staff, we've got parents, we've got the children, obviously the most important ones. Ask them what they want. What is it that's going to make this fun? What is it that's going to make this something that you want to do every day or not? Or do you want to do it once a week? Whatever. But that diversity and representation, people around the table from all of the groups that you're trying to engage, I think is really important, because otherwise you'll never be able to make decisions that resonate with that population unless they've got a voice in that conversation. So I think that diversity and representation and engaging those stakeholders is really important, and I think that should transmit across anything that we try to do. Is ask them, what we've got this concept. What do you think will make it work? Because ultimately we want you to engage in it. So I think that would be really important.
I think I think it feels to me. Tell me if I'm wrong here, but it feels to me like, having worked in sport and physical activity for, my entire life and my entire career, that, that we're almost at a little bit of it feels to me like we've come to a bit of a kind of a pinch point, where generally now within society, people are recognizing the importance, and they're switching on to the sports experience for people being really important, and how we provide that sports experience and the ways in which we approach providing the ideal sports experience is really important. It really matters. It's not just, here's a building, here's some provision, here's some activity, here's a program, right, off you go. It's not as simple as that. There's a huge human element to this that really, really matters. And the energy and effort and resources and expertise that's required to do that effectively and well, and the infrastructure required to do that effectively and well is enormous, and hard, but so worthwhile. And it feels to me like people are starting to get to grips with that now. I don't know. Does it feel the same way to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. There's this sort of this. You're right. There's having the facilities and there's having the people. But then you're right. There's that sort of that ecosystem of variables around all of that to try and make it work. I think it is recognised, and there's like, I think going right back to the start of this conversation, there's an overwhelming amount of evidence to show us that we are doing, we are talking about the right things, and we're saying the right things. I think that pinch point is, well, how do we really make that happen, and how do we really make it, if it is important, and if we do consider it a public health issue, which it clearly is, then how do we make it accessible for all? And how do we create such a rich, positive, meaningful and varied offer that everyone can engage in it? And I think for me and for us here, it's that bit. It's how do we get everyone to engage in it? And how do we get everyone to come back to want to do it? And that will take a monumental effort, but one well worth it. It will take a seismic shift in mindsets and attitudes, from classrooms to playgrounds to sports centres to leisure centres to open spaces and parks. It will take a massive investment and real support behind the workforce. We've got an incredible workforce, and I think it's bigger than people realise that it is. And it does include, in my head, it includes everyone from those people in classrooms all the way through to more traditional sports coaches, and literally everyone in between, up, down, everyone in it. And I think part of it is mindset. And I think let's recognise that we're in a different age now. We do need to rebuild physical activity back into people's daily lives, and it has to go back. Well, it has to come into parts of daily life that it wasn't in before, because we're not as active when we work now. So let's not pretend that we're going to go back to really active sort of manual labour jobs. We're not. So let's look at different ways. Let's look at ways in which we can get people, whether it's active in their lunch breaks, adults and children. Let's put a bit more emphasis on not just calling cycling to school active travel, but making it more attractive and appealing. It's got to be safer. It's got to be more enjoyable. What an opportunity. We talked about the space that we want children and parents to have post a football match or a session. Well, what a space that is. That ride on the way to school, that walk on the way to school. So I think there's lots of things we can do, but we are at a point where we've got to make it happen, I think from the consultation that we conducted, that then ultimately came Generation Active 2, what was really clear is this real groundswell of enthusiasm and real groundswell of recognition. That we do need to work more collaboratively. We do need to think about things differently. We need to innovate. We need to harness technology better. There's lots of things we can, but partnership working is absolutely key. But it is the right thing to do, both for individuals and individuals' health, and economically as well. It makes sense in many levels. We just got to get it all moving. But I think the pinch point is there, but I think the enthusiasm's there as well, across hopefully across government, and certainly across sector. We've got to move the needle now and really start to put some extra emphasis on it. The workforce, going back to that comment you said, people make the difference. What a great area to really enhance and develop. People do make the difference, and they might be the difference between someone wanting to go down to their local football club and not. So let's really value that person.
Couldn't say it better myself, and I think that's a fabulous point in which we can kind of draw our conversation to a close. Jack, you mentioned a couple of reports. You mentioned Generation Inactive particularly. How would people be able to go tracking that down and to be able to pull out some of the quality insight that's within that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So just go onto the best way to get it is go onto the UK Active website, so ukactive.com. There's a reports tab. Go and have a look at that. I think please go and have a look. And I'm on social media, so please feel free to contact me via Twitter. I'm sure Stuart might tag me in the upload of this, but really keen to continue that conversation. If anyone's got any questions about that report in particular, obviously more than happy to really engage in that conversation. We talked about this idea of sort of communities of learning and keeping the conversation going. That's why I was drawn to this podcast in the first place, because it was a conversation, and that's what I think we need to do more of, and really expand those conversations. So please, let's engage in conversation about that, and or about any of the reports we do. It's a hub of information on the website. So please do that. Connect with me, or connect directly or by yourself, Stuart, and let's keep that conversation going, because that groundswell of enthusiasm is something we want to harness.
I know that many people are out there who are part of the, let's call it the talent equation tribe, I suppose, without wanting to get too schmaltzy. A lot of people who contact me via various different mediums, either email or whatever, quite often one of the things they're trying to do is they're trying to bring about a cultural shift. And sometimes they're struggling to do that because they're struggling to bring people to get them away from that kind of performance narrative, if you like. That's certainly the sort of thing that Debbie Sayers at Salisbury Rovers is doing, and various other organisations. And so there's definitely some very, very good insight and resources from you guys that would be supportive of that would help to make an argument. And hopefully what people can get from this is that there is a range of national organisations that are very, very supportive of many of these grassroots movements and very supportive of trying to empower people locally to actually bring about a local community change. This isn't about, nebulous big policy shifts. Yes, there is that, but actually what this is about is saying, you want to do this for yourselves? Absolutely, that's fine. If you need something that's going to help you make the case with people locally, whether it's in a local authority to unlock facilities, whether it's going to have a conversation with a leisure trust, whether it's having a conversation with somebody about getting access to parks, whether it's got a conversation with the school because they've reduced the amount of physical activity provision for young people, there's plenty of resources out there to help you make that case. And I know you would be only too happy to hear that people have been able to use the report in that way.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I won't repeat that because you said it so superbly well. Yeah, we're here to support. We want to, galvanise and like you say, support that sort of grassroots movement. We're always at the end of a tweet or a phone or an email, go onto the website. Absolutely, we're here to do that. Our mission is to get more people more active, more often, and here to support those people that have got an interest in doing so. So yeah, here to help, definitely.
Brilliant stuff, Jack. Really appreciate your time. Really enjoyed the conversation. I knew we could get through an hour and a half in no time whatsoever. I do hope, all power to you, Albo. I think the work you're doing is great. I'm very fortunate to be able to, call you a friend and a colleague. I think we're both on the same page in terms of the kind of our joint missions to try and change the physical activity landscape. And I'm looking forward to exciting things in the future.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Talent Equation podcast. If you like the show, then please consider supporting it by leaving a review on your favorite podcast player, telling your friends about it, or even becoming a hero and show your appreciation by becoming a patron. Just head over to thetalentequation.co.uk and click on the Becoming a Patron button at the top of the page.